Hi, my name's Arlena. I was told I could watch my own daughter's wedding online, like I was some distant cousin, not the woman who raised her. I dressed up anyway, did my makeup, set out wine and snacks like a guest who mattered. And then, right there on the screen, I saw the woman in red. The secret, the betrayal, the collapse. They called it a celebration, but I watched everything fall apart, on camera, in real time. What if you were erased from your own child's life and still had to sit front row to the ruin? Would you speak up or stay silent and hit record? I woke up with the soft creak of the floorboard outside my bedroom, a familiar sound I usually associated with mornings when Isolde was little, sneaking in to ask if she could have pancakes for breakfast. Those mornings were warm. This one felt still. I watered the succulents on the kitchen windowsill, careful not to drown them, set out my cup, brewed tea, everything quiet as always. But today, I had set my alarm early. I thought I was going to be on a planning call for the wedding. That call never came. Instead, just after 9, my phone lit up with a message from an unfamiliar number, though I knew immediately who it was, the fiancé, Larson, a name that always landed cold in my mouth. The text read, "We've arranged for you to view the wedding online. We understand travel might be too much." I read it 3 times, thinking maybe I missed a sentence. Something with warmth, but no, it was just that. Tidy, efficient, erasing. I didn't remember telling anyone I couldn't travel. In fact, I'd offered to help with venue scouting back in January. That message, more than the lack of a call, felt like a door gently shut. It echoed in the silence of the kitchen. Online, you can watch from afar. I tried to call Isolde immediately. Voicemail. I texted her next, trying to sound calm. Got a message from Larson. "Is this your plan?" No reply. I waited. Ate half a piece of toast. Still nothing. I folded the kitchen towel 4 times, then unfolded it. The answer came 6 hours later, when the sky outside was already dimming. "Don't call anymore. I'm stressed. Just trust me." I read it again. Trust me, like I'd been meddling, like I was the one crowding the space, rather than someone being boxed out of it. I didn't cry. That's not my way. But I did stand in the doorway for a long while, just looking at the hallway. The same one she used to barrel down after soccer practice, backpack bouncing. That night, I didn't cook. I made toast again. No butter, just dry, a placeholder for something I didn't have an appetite to finish. The next morning, the mail arrived with a thud. I knew the envelope before I even opened it. Heavy, cream-colored, embossed, a formal wedding invitation. Inside was the card, all the right fonts, all the right names, and there it was, my name printed, not handwritten. No personal note, no wish you were here, just a line at the bottom. Stream link available for remote guests. I stared at that card like it was a stranger. Not one word about a seat, a role, a mention of mother of the bride. No call to walk her down the aisle. No suggestion to even wear a specific color. Just a hyperlink. I stood at the sink with the card in my hand and thought about the last time she asked me for help, 6 months ago. "Can you find the recipe for that lemon cake Grandma used to make?" I sent it right away. No thank you after. Just silence. Then a picture on social media of her serving lemon cake at a bridal brunch, captioned, "Family Traditions." In the early evening, I sat on the porch and watched the sun slide down behind the pecan trees. Cicadas hummed their steady summer song. It was a dry heat, one that stuck to the skin but didn't break you down unless you let it. I held the wedding card on my lap, unopened again, as if I could reverse it by folding it over and over. A car passed by, then another. I didn't move. The porch boards beneath me were cool, familiar. I'd painted them myself 3 years ago after the morning after the invitation arrived. I logged into my laptop without thinking. Just an old habit. There was a social media notification glowing quietly in the corner of the screen. Valora had posted something. I almost didn't click. Almost. But my finger moved before I gave it permission. The post was a sweeping aerial photo of the venue. Rows of white chairs, a pergola dripping with flowers, marble steps, champagne flutes, sunlight perfectly filtered through centuries-old oaks. The caption read, "A dream coming true for our beautiful couple." I stared at it for a long time. That venue, that exact venue. I'd shown it to Isolde once, folded into a bridal magazine I found in the dentist's waiting room 5 years ago. I remembered her face lighting up, her voice softening. "Mom, it looks like something out of a book." We talked about a small ceremony, barefoot in the grass, wildflowers in her hair, and now here it was, without the girl who once dreamed it with me. I closed the laptop, then opened it again. I ended up on the wedding website, fingers hovering before I clicked Our Story. The same photo of the couple appeared, her in pale blue, him with that tight polished smile. Underneath, a long paragraph about finding love through shared values and vision. Below that, the names of the wedding party, bridesmaids, groomsmen, toast speakers, a welcome message from Valora, a note from her husband. My name wasn't there, not even as mother of the bride, not even in passing. My role, not listed, no seat marked, no words shared. I scrolled through the digital photo gallery, looking for signs of inclusion, for anything remotely mine. One image showed Valora giving a toast under a chandelier. Another, her husband raising a glass beside a giant floral arrangement. There was even a snapshot of the calligraphy tags on each place setting. I read through them twice. My name wasn't there. I wasn't there. Later that afternoon, I got a text from Nancy, an old friend from my book club. She wrote, "Saw Isolde's wedding preview. She looks stunning. What a family." A link followed. I tapped it, expecting a clip or maybe a candid. Instead, it opened a full album, photo after photo of Isolde glowing. The backdrop changed from ceremony to reception to sunset, but the cast stayed the same. Her father, her friends, the groom's family. Valora's hand on Isolde's shoulder in several frames. Her father dancing with her under the string lights. The caption read, "Surrounded by everyone who matters." I didn't see myself in a single image. I didn't see my siblings, my cousins, my friends, the people I'd raised Isolde among. There was space in the pictures, beautiful, choreographed space, just not for me. They called it a family wedding, but the family was edited. I stared at one particular shot, Isolde between the two families. Valora's dress matched the floral arrangements. Larson's father beamed like a politician on election night. Isolde looked radiant, like someone else's daughter. For a moment, I wondered if any of the guests had asked about me, if someone from our side of the tree had quietly questioned my absence, or maybe they were told I'd chosen not to come. Maybe they believed it. Maybe it was easier to believe I'd stepped away than to realize I was pushed out. I shut the screen, leaned back in my chair, and just sat there. My tea had gone cold hours ago, still resting in the same spot beside the invitation envelope. I picked it up, ran my finger over the embossed edge again. The card didn't feel any warmer than the first time. And that was it. Not a phone call, not a word of thanks, no picture, no name tag, just a void, a carefully curated void. And somehow, this kind of erasure hurt worse than if she'd screamed at me. If she'd cursed me out, I could have screamed back. But this was quiet, final, like I'd never existed at all. I had never been so publicly invisible in my entire life. And somehow, it hurt more than being cursed out loud. It was nearly 5 p.m. when I checked my email, more out of habit than purpose. I wasn't expecting anything. Most of the messages these days were junk, discounts I didn't need, updates from community boards I no longer read. But one subject line stood out. Thought you'd want to see this. It was from Marlene, a former colleague who now worked at a private school in Charleston. Attached was a single photo, candid, clearly taken at an event. There was Larson, standing too close to a woman I didn't recognize, a blonde in a red dress, their bodies tilted inward, his hand lightly grazing her back. The caption under the image read, "Larson and Diana, representing the Sullivan Foundation at this weekend's gala." My stomach didn't drop. It tightened, quietly, firmly. Diana. So that was her name. I didn't forward the photo immediately. I sat with it for a few minutes, the cursor hovering. Then I typed, "I just thought you should see this," and sent it to Isolde. Nothing dramatic, no accusations, just here. And then I waited. An hour passed, then 2. I refreshed the inbox, checked my phone for a reply. Nothing. I kept the volume on high, though the phone never buzzed. Around 10 that night, after 3 more glances at the inbox and a short walk just to clear my head, I accepted the answer. No response was, in itself, an answer. The next day, just before dusk, a box arrived. The kind I used for shipping gifts. Recycled cardboard, my own handwriting, in blue ink. My stomach knew what it was before I opened it. The quilt. The wedding quilt I'd spent 3 months stitching by hand. I stood over the box without opening it, the way someone might hesitate before unearthing something buried. But the weight of it, familiar, dense, undeniably mine, pulled me in. I peeled back the tape slowly. No card inside, no note, just the quilt, folded precisely the way I'd sent it, the edges still sharp from my hands. The faint scent of lavender remained, soft and clinging. I had sprayed it lightly before packaging it, imagining it would help soothe her nerves on the night before the ceremony. A little piece of home, I'd thought, a quiet protection. Now it was back, like a message wrapped in silence. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I placed the box on the dining room table and walked to the sink, filling a glass of water just to have something to do with my hands. It took me back, without warning, to the day I received my own wedding quilt from my mother. She had stayed up the night before my wedding to finish embroidering our initials in the corner. I remembered her tired smile as she handed it to me, the pride behind it. I hadn't understood the depth of it then, the weight of legacy, love stitched into fabric. You don't return something like that, not unless you want to say something you can't say aloud. Later that evening, I sat on the couch with the quilt in my lap. My fingers traced the stitching, Isolde's name embroidered carefully beside the date. The pattern was one I'd chosen years ago, simple diamonds meant to symbolize strength through interlocking support. Now, it just looked like effort wasted. I picked up my phone and typed, "Did something happen?" The quilt came back. "Are you okay?" It showed delivered, then read. Still, no reply. The house was quiet. Too quiet for how much noise lived in my chest. I wasn't angry, not exactly. It was something else. A quiet betrayal. Like being replaced, not by a person, but by indifference. Like my role in her life had expired, and no one told me. Eventually, I carried the quilt back into the bedroom. I opened the cedar chest at the foot of my bed, the one that held baby clothes, school drawings, handprints on crumpled construction paper. I folded the quilt carefully, tucking it beneath the childhood things, not as a discarded gift, but as a chapter I had no more pages to write in. I rested my hand on top of it and whispered, "I'm still your mother, even if you don't act like my daughter." Sometimes silence is louder than any scream, and it's the sound that finally made me hear the truth. I didn't sleep much the night the quilt came back. I spent hours rearranging furniture that didn't need rearranging, wiping down already clean counters, opening and closing drawers like something might change if I touched it differently. By the time the sky lightened, I was sitting in the same spot on the couch, staring at nothing. Around 10, I did something I hadn't done before. I called him, Larson. It rang once, twice. Then he answered. His tone was clipped. "This isn't a good time." I ignored the warning. "I'm trying to reach my daughter, and since she's not responding to me, I figured I'd ask you directly." There was a pause. "I think it's best if you stop pressuring Isolde. She's under enough stress." Pressure. That word rang in my ears like a slur. I sat up straighter. "I'm not pressuring her. I'm trying to understand why I've been completely cut out of the biggest day of her life." "Look," he said flatly, "we just thought it would be easier for everyone this way. Less conflict." I hung up. I didn't yell, didn't argue, just hung up, because in that moment I understood exactly what kind of person my daughter was marrying and what kind of family she was marrying into. After that call, I opened the RSVP site one more time. I'd memorized the names already, but I had to check again, hoping I'd missed something. My sister's name? Absent. My nieces? Gone. The Monroe cousins from Georgia who took Isolde fishing when she was 10? Not there. But the total guest count, 216. They hadn't forgotten. They'd chosen. I stared at the list, scanning every name on the groom's side. Extended family I'd never met. Business associates, friends of Valora. There was even a slot reserved for the wedding planner's mother, but not a single person from the life I'd spent decades building around Isolde. I sat with that list for a long while before calling one more person, my niece Eliza in Dallas. She answered on the second ring. "Aunt Arlena," she said, soft. I didn't know if I should call. "I just need to ask," I said. "Were you invited to the wedding?" Eliza hesitated. "We were told it was a tight family event, immediate only. We thought you were okay with it." That phrase, tight family, struck a nerve, because I was her family. I wasn't distant. I wasn't optional. I'd shown up to every graduation, every illness, every late-night breakdown. And now, it was a tight family event I didn't make the cut for. We ended the call politely, kindly. But when I hung up, something inside me shifted. I stood in the middle of the living room, staring at a picture of my mother on the mantel. Apron on, flower on her cheek, hands mid-laughter. She once told me, "Families aren't bloodlines. They're tables we keep setting." I had spent a lifetime setting that table, and now they were serving a meal in a house I wasn't even allowed to enter. Later that afternoon, I sat down at my desk and began typing an email. Not to Isolde, to Larson and Valora. The subject line was blank. I didn't want it to be flagged or redirected. I wanted it to land where it needed to. The message was short. I will no longer pretend this is just a misunderstanding. You've made it clear who matters and who does not. I won't fight to be included where I'm unwelcome. But know this, you didn't erase me. You revealed yourselves. I didn't hit send. I saved it to drafts. Then I did something harder. I logged back into the RSVP site and declined the invitation. I unchecked the live stream box. I removed my contact information, not because I was giving up, because I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of my silence masquerading as acceptance. They would not get to say, I chose not to come. I chose not to be humiliated. I stood, walked to the entryway table, and picked up the invitation one last time. Then I folded it in half, then again, until it no longer resembled anything ceremonial. I slipped it into the trash with the kind of dignity no one sees but yourself. You can pretend I was never part of this, I whispered to the quiet house, but I will never forget that I was. I wasn't excluded because they forgot. I was excluded because they remembered exactly who I am. The video was everywhere that morning. Not the kind anyone forwarded with excitement, just the quiet type of thing people shared behind backs. A pre-wedding montage posted by Valora herself. Celebrating our son, the caption read. I clicked it before I could talk myself out of it. The music swelled, slow piano at first. Then came the voiceovers, teachers from his prep school, his first boss, even the family pastor. Pictures flicked by, toddler in a sailboat, teenager in a tux, proud graduate with Valora hugging him front and center. I waited for the shift, maybe a nod to Isolde, to her upbringing, our life together. But there was none. There were no baby photos of her, no silly dances from high school, no snapshots of the birthday cakes I baked every year without fail. Instead, Isolde appeared at the 2-minute mark, standing beside him in a dress I didn't recognize. The lace was tight around her throat, the sleeves too formal, too structured. That wasn't her. It wasn't us. I paused the video, and for a second, all I saw was how far she'd drifted. Not in distance, but in shape, in outline. Her figure was there, but the softness I knew, the spirit that couldn't be boxed in, was gone. Replaced with design, style, someone else's image of perfection. I remembered our prom dress fight, me tugging her toward flats, her begging for heels. We'd compromised on a low wedge. That girl had a voice. This one looked muted. I let the video play again. Valora stood at a podium in the reception hall, toasting the crowd, her words glowing like gold dust. We raised a man fit to carry a legacy. We raised a protector, a visionary, a Sullivan. We. Not a hint of who stood behind the girl he would marry. No mention of the woman who held her hair through stomach flus, who walked miles at soccer games, who stayed quiet through every boyfriend before this one. Later that afternoon, the wedding gallery went live. A flood of images curated with intent. Captions labeled every flower and plate with credits. Concept by Mrs. Valora Sullivan, inspired by Valora's vision board. Not a single nod to the fact that Isolde had once pasted clippings of wildflower arches into her own scrapbook, years before Larson existed. Then came the photo that broke me a little. Isolde stood beneath the floral arch, bouquet in hand, and dangling from one of the bouquet ribbons was a tiny silver charm, a fork and spoon crossed together. I knew it immediately. It used to hang from the window frame above my stove, a silly trinket she'd given me for Mother's Day at 13, saying, "Because you cook love into everything." I hadn't even noticed it was missing. They'd taken it, used it, but not once said where it came from. I opened my journal, the one I used only when words began to eat at my ribs. I wrote, "They're not just erasing me. They're using the pieces I gave her to write their version of her." The words looked too sharp on the page, but they were true. I thought of the first dress she sewed in home economics, crooked seams, loud fabric, but she wore it to school, proud. That girl created herself. This woman in the photo was being remade. I called Joyce that evening. She was the kind of friend who never needed preamble. I didn't even say hello, just started. "They think because I haven't shouted, I've agreed." Joyce didn't interrupt. "I haven't agreed," I said. "I've just been deciding what my voice should sound like." She let silence hold us both for a moment, then quietly said, "When you decide, I'll be here." After the call, I walked to the hallway closet. I pulled out the photo box from the top shelf and dug through until I found it. The picture of us baking together, flour on our cheeks, hair tied up messily. I remembered the cookies burned that day, but we laughed until our stomachs hurt. That moment was real. I printed a copy, slid it into a simple frame, and placed it near the front door. Not for anyone else, just for me. To remind myself that truth doesn't vanish because someone edits it out. You don't need a platform to have a legacy. You just need a memory and the will to protect it. If they won't tell the story honestly, I'll keep the truth where it belongs. On my wall, in my voice, in my bones. I spent the morning pretending the day was ordinary. I swept the front porch, refilled the bird feeder, and trimmed the ivy that clung too hard to the brick. I didn't want to think about what was ahead, but by 3 o'clock, I'd started setting up the living room like a guest who'd been invited properly. Wine poured, cheese arranged, a plate of crackers I didn't want. I even changed clothes, not that anyone would see me, but something about watching my daughter's wedding in sweatpants felt like another kind of surrender. I put on a blouse she once complimented and some lipstick that had probably expired. Then I sat down, opened my laptop, and clicked the link. The screen loaded with a pleasant harp melody. A wide shot showed the venue's lawn. Chairs set in neat rows, a floral arch trembling in the breeze. Guests in pastel outfits milled about, champagne in hand. Everything was curated, glossy, expensive, but there was no mention of me. No place card, no reference, just empty space where acknowledgement might have been. I leaned forward when the camera panned to the bridal suite. The footage cut to a mirror shot. Isolde, in a white robe, having her makeup done. She looked beautiful, of course, but not herself. Her eyes darted between the stylist and something off-screen. Then, as the camera lingered, she glanced directly into the lens. For the briefest moment, her gaze pierced the fourth wall. And mine. It wasn't a casual look. It was direct, like she knew I was watching, like she wanted me to see her. There was no smile, no softening, just raw, silent recognition. My breath caught. I didn't know what that look meant, but it wasn't joy. It wasn't peace. The camera shifted. The stream glitched slightly, audio dropping for a second before resuming. The harp music looped oddly. Guests were now seated. The planner spoke with someone sharply, her lips moving quickly, but no sound carried. Something wasn't quite right. Then came the procession. Groomsmen shuffled nervously. A flower girl dropped petals too early. The camera hesitated on the aisle, zooming in and out as though unsure what to focus on. For a professional stream, it was messy, too human. I scribbled notes beside me. At first, it felt obsessive, but the longer I watched, the more obvious it became. There was tension they hadn't managed to hide. Subtle cues, but real. Forced laughter. Hand squeezes that felt more like signals than affection. When Isolde entered, the sound dipped again. Her face was serene, but her steps hesitant. The camera wobbled slightly before freezing completely. My heart stopped with it. The screen locked on a frame. Isolde, just before reaching the altar. Her expression unreadable. I stared at that frozen image for what felt like hours. My hand hovered over the keyboard, refreshing the page again and again. Nothing. 30 seconds passed before the stream resumed, jarringly. The pastor was already mid-vow. The camera's angle had changed. The audio was slightly delayed. Isolde was no longer smiling. Larson's hand was stiff at her waist. Something had happened in those missing 30 seconds. I was sure of it. The stream continued, but I no longer trusted what I was seeing. It felt orchestrated, filtered, wrong. So I did something I hadn't done before. I reached over and clicked the screen record button on my laptop. If they were going to pretend everything was perfect, I would capture what wasn't. I sat through the entire ceremony, quietly recording. I captured every shift in expression, every cutaway that lingered too long, every whispered word caught by accident. I didn't know what I'd do with the footage, but I knew it was important, not just for Isolde, for me. After the stream ended, I watched the video back, this time without distraction, frame by frame. There was a rhythm to the discomfort, a tension threaded beneath the script. I didn't have proof of anything illegal, but I had truth, and sometimes that's enough. I saved the file to a folder on my desktop, renaming it with slow, deliberate keystrokes, Truth, before they edit it. They wanted a perfect wedding. What they got was a perfect recording of everything they tried to hide. The screen went dark just as Isolde stood at the mic. 1 second, her lips were parting, eyes steady and uncertain. The next, I was staring at a spinning wheel in the middle of a black screen, a loading symbol that mocked me with each silent rotation. I tapped the touchpad, then clicked refresh. Still nothing. It wasn't a power issue. My lights were still on. Internet was fine. I pulled my phone from the charger and opened the same link there. Error loading stream. Tried the tablet. Same. I sat frozen on my couch, still in the blouse I'd pressed for this absurd theater, watching nothing, listening to nothing. For nearly 10 minutes, I waited. Then I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and poured the wine I had meant to sip slowly throughout the reception. I drank it in 2 gulps, mouth dry. This wasn't a glitch. It was a decision. Isolde's eyes, just before the cut, had been too still, too focused. There was something she had planned to say, something they didn't want said. I returned to the couch and opened the video file I'd recorded earlier. I hadn't meant to be so paranoid, but some small thread in my gut had told me to hit record, and thank God I had. Rewinding to the final minute before the cut, I slowed the playback. There she was, adjusting the mic, fingers trembling slightly. Her first words were, "Before we thank anyone, I need to say something important." Then a half breath. Then, gone. The recorded version ended with a sharp digital skip, right where the live stream had glitched. Hours passed. Around midnight, a notification popped up on my laptop. The groom's family had posted a recap video. A perfect day. I clicked. It was beautifully edited, soft lighting, piano music, voiceovers from guests. There were no hiccups, no stumbles, no honest moments, and no speech, no Isolde at the microphone, no hesitation, no something important. The recap replaced truth with symmetry, chaos with choreography. They had deleted her voice. I opened both videos side by side, mine and theirs, played them back in tandem. In mine, you could hear murmurs, the clink of a dropped glass, Isolde's voice tightening just before the cut. In theirs, it was seamless joy, no room for discomfort. A few minutes later, my cousin Carol messaged me. We were told the stream crashed, but Heather said it was pulled. I didn't answer. Instead, I created a folder on my hard drive and named it Unedited Truth, Do Not Delete. I moved the recording into it, backed it up twice, one on a thumb drive, the other to cloud storage. If they were building a fortress of lies, I was building a record they couldn't burn. Then I opened my notebook. I started writing, not poetry, not a diary, just notes, every detail I'd seen, every person who looked away at the wrong moment, every sentence spoken that didn't match the smiles. I wasn't sure who I was writing it for. Maybe Isolde, maybe myself, maybe a future in which someone finally asks, what really happened? At the bottom of the page, I wrote one line in bold ink. If this is war, I won't fire the first shot, but I won't be caught unarmed again. My voice hadn't echoed in the wedding hall, but it would exist somewhere, in data, in handwriting, in memory. Because they think they're crafting legacy, I'm just making sure memory doesn't get overwritten. It started with a toast. The camera swept across the reception hall like it had something to prove. Crystal glasses clinking, white lights draped above polished floors, guests in sequins and smiles. But I wasn't fooled by any of it. I'd been watching long enough to know the show from the seams. Valora stood up, microphone in hand, and announced with theatrical sweetness, before we begin the couple's first dance, we have a very special presentation. Her voice had the kind of syrupy confidence that comes from knowing nothing will interrupt you. Isolde's smile faded instantly, not subtly. It drained, as if she knew what was coming. Larson shifted beside her, his jaw twitching as he reached for his wine glass too quickly. Something in the air tightened. I leaned forward, the hair on my arms rising without permission. The slideshow began. Music swelled. Bruno Mars, I think. The screen behind them lit up with photos. Childhood snaps of Larson, grinning and golden, high school awards, college parties. Then a woman in red appeared. Not just any woman. Her, Diana. The same woman from that fundraiser photo weeks ago. I'd seen her once, but the image had never left me. And now here she was, arm in arm with Larson in image after image, laughing with him on a ski slope, toasting him in a tuxedo, sitting beside him in a candlelit restaurant. None of these were old photos. One had a visible date from just 3 months ago. The guests murmured. I could hear it through the stream. Even with the low mic sensitivity, it was undeniable. A wave of confusion moved across the crowd. Then Isolde stepped forward. The mic on her table was still live. Who is she? She asked. Her voice wasn't angry, just broken. The camera didn't cut away. I don't think they had time. Larson froze. Before he could speak, Valora placed a hand on his shoulder and said, Diana is a dear friend of the family. She's always been close to us. We all thought, well, she was the more suitable match. But we support whatever choices our children make. Glass shattered somewhere off screen. The live stream flickered. Then it froze. I stared at the screen, which locked on a single frame. Isolde's face, stunned, mascara smudged, mouth parted mid-breath. The silence that followed in my living room was deafening. I tapped the keyboard, refreshed the page. Nothing. I stood, paced the room, grabbed my phone, tried the stream on another browser. It was gone. I sank onto the edge of the sofa, hands trembling. But it wasn't fear. It was fury, hot and righteous. Moments later, my phone buzzed with a message from my cousin Cheryl, who'd been seated near the back. "It's a disaster here. I'll call you later. Diana showed up." That was all I needed to see. I closed the phone, walked to my laptop, replayed the portion I'd managed to screen record, watched again as Valora smiled her polished smile, watched again as Larson glanced over his shoulder before the pictures of Diana began. They had planned it, or at least permitted it. Either way, it wasn't a mistake. And then it hit me, harder than the rest of it. This wasn't my shame. This wasn't my ruin. This wasn't even my grief. This was theirs. They had pushed me out to protect an illusion. They'd painted me as disruptive, as old-fashioned, as the shadow in the corner. But I hadn't made this mess. I hadn't lit the match. I'd only stepped back far enough to watch them burn it all down themselves. I whispered out loud, though no one was there to hear it. It didn't need me to fall apart. It broke itself. I clicked pause, leaned back, and closed my eyes. For the first time in days, I felt clear, not at peace, but sharp, focused, not a mother scorned, a witness uninvited, to a collapse I couldn't have prevented, even if I'd been allowed in the door. They erased me to keep things perfect, only for the truth to burn the whole illusion down. I woke before the sun, phone buzzing softly on the nightstand. For a second, I hoped it was Isolde. A message, a call, anything, but it wasn't. Just another group thread, pinging with videos, blurred screenshots, shaky clips taken by guests. The wedding, or what remained of it, had gone viral. I rubbed my eyes and opened the first video. It showed the reception hall in chaos. Guests murmuring, one woman crying. Someone wrote in the comments, "So much drama. Heard the mom stirred all this up." Classic narcissist. That mom was me. I kept scrolling, skimming messages that painted me as controlling, bitter, jealous. One comment stopped me cold. "She's always been overbearing. Everyone knows she's the reason this wedding exploded." I didn't cry. I got up and made coffee. The kettle hissed while I opened my email, needing something ordinary to ground me. That's when I saw the message. No sender name, just a subject line. She deserved to know. I clicked. There it was, a PDF, the prenup, scanned, watermarked, from a law office I recognized. Every page was highlighted, every clause underscored in yellow. Isolde's name, Larson's conditions, what she'd keep, what she'd lose. It wasn't just financial, it was behavioral. Clauses about public image, weight expectations, social appearances, event attendance. A detailed description of what a Sullivan wife must be. It read like a job contract, not a marriage. I read it once, then again, slower, cold, clinical, cruel. Someone had sent it to me not to gossip, but to confirm I wasn't crazy. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from my cousin Rachel. "I was told you refused to come because you didn't approve of the groom. Is that true?" I stared at the screen before replying. Did they also say they never gave me a seat? No reply. I printed the prenup and slid it onto the kitchen table. In thick black marker, I wrote across the top, This is the unity they protected, because that was the story online. Family unity. My name had been dragged into every discussion about dysfunction. Strangers defending a curated image, blaming me for cracks they hadn't bothered to see. But I had seen, and now I had proof. I sat down to write, not to the world, but to Isolde. No public post, no email chain, just a letter, handwritten, careful. I attached a printed copy of the prenup with my notes in the margins, circled phrases, underlined demands. At the bottom of the letter, I wrote one sentence. I didn't walk away from your wedding. I walked away from being used as cover for someone else's lie. I sealed it in an envelope and placed it next to my laptop. I didn't know if I would send it. Later that afternoon, I opened the window and let the air in. No music, no noise, just wind and birds and the sound of things settling. I looked at the envelope again. I didn't feel like a woman waiting to be heard. I felt like a woman who'd already spoken, through evidence, through silence, through what I refused to let them rewrite. And in that stillness, I finally understood. This wasn't revenge. It was release. I didn't break the silence. The truth did, and it chose my side before I ever spoke a word. The call came just before midnight. I hadn't planned to stay up that late, but I'd fallen asleep on the couch with the light still on, the scent of my half-burnt lavender candle filling the room. When the phone rang, I jolted upright, heart already thudding. I didn't recognize the number at first, area code from South Carolina, but I answered anyway. Mom? Her voice cracked. I sat up straighter. You saw it, didn't you? I swallowed. I did. Then a pause, so long, I thought we'd lost connection. Can you come get me? There was no plan, no hotel, no idea what I'd be walking into, but I didn't hesitate. I told her to wait by arrivals. I grabbed my keys, a change of clothes, and my passport just in case. I didn't even brush my hair. The silence between us on that call was heavier than anything she could have said. By sunrise, I was parked at the terminal, watching the glass doors slide open and close with each wave of tired passengers. Isolde walked through slowly, shoulders slumped, her dress coat wrinkled, face bare. She carried a single bag slung over her shoulder, not even zipped shut. Her eyes found mine. No smile, no tears, just that look, the one I hadn't seen since she was 5 and scraped her knee at the park. She slid into the passenger seat without a word. We didn't speak on the drive home, not through the toll booth, not through the gas stop where I grabbed her a bottle of water she barely touched. When we reached the house, I unlocked the door, held it open, and watched her walk back into the space she once stormed out of. The kitchen was exactly as she'd left it years ago, except quieter. I set the kettle on. The noise of it boiling filled the silence between us. I didn't ask what happened. I didn't need to. I poured 2 cups, placed one in front of her, and sat across the table. She stared at the steam rising. Then finally, she spoke. Please don't share the video yet. Her voice was hoarse, like she hadn't used it in days. I need to be the one to say it, not them, not you. I took a slow sip of tea. Then say it soon, because truth doesn't wait forever. She didn't nod, but her shoulders eased. A kind of unspoken recognition passed between us. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a breath in the right direction. Later, after she showered and changed into one of my old sweatshirts, she curled up on the couch and didn't move. I walked into the office and opened my laptop. The video file was still there, staring back at me. I hovered over the upload button. Just one click would have sent it out into the world. Instead, I renamed the file. Isolde's story, hold until ready. Not a surrender, just a pause, because sometimes power isn't in the blast, it's in the restraint. I closed the lid and returned to the living room. She had fallen asleep, her legs tucked under her, like she used to when she watched cartoons on Saturday mornings. Her face, without makeup, looked 10 years younger. The tension I'd seen for months was gone, replaced by something that resembled peace, or maybe just exhaustion. I sat beside her, watching the steady rise and fall of her breath. "You came back broken," I whispered, brushing a loose strand of hair from her forehead. "But you came back to me." She thought she'd return to me in pieces, but I had kept every piece safe, waiting for her to reclaim them. She left the note on the kitchen table, a single line in her slanted handwriting. "Walk with me tomorrow?" The paper was torn at the edge, like it had come from the back of a receipt pad. The ink smudged slightly where her hand must have hesitated. I read it twice. Not a request, not an apology, just an opening. I didn't ask for more. I didn't mention it that night or even the next morning. I let it live quietly on the counter next to the fruit bowl and unopened mail, like it belonged there all along. When the afternoon came, I put on my walking shoes, same ones I used to wear when she was a child, and we'd loop the park twice before heading home for popsicles. She was already there when I arrived, standing beneath the old oak tree near the library path, the one where we'd sat so many weekends ago for story time and spilled juice boxes. Her back was to me. She didn't turn when she heard my steps, but I knew she knew it was me. We didn't speak. We walked, side by side, down the gravel path lined with brittle grass and dandelions that refused to die no matter how many feet trampled them. A jogger passed. A dog barked somewhere across the playground. The wind picked up slightly, just enough to rustle the pages of a book left open on a nearby bench. And still, no words. But it wasn't a cold silence. It wasn't the silence we'd shared in the kitchen days before, or in the car ride from the airport. This one felt full, crowded with everything we didn't know how to say. The leaves crunched beneath our feet like a rhythm, steady and grounding. I thought, not every wound has to be spoken to be felt. Some things make their mark just by being lived through. We reached the second loop of the trail and sat down on the bench nearest the duck pond. The wood was still sun-warmed. I waited, elbows resting on my knees. She spoke first. I didn't know how far I'd gone until there was no one left to defend me. I didn't nod. I didn't offer comfort. I just listened. Her voice cracked, but she didn't cry. She looked out over the water, like the truth was buried somewhere in its ripples. I took a deep breath and said quietly, "You weren't the one who left. You just followed someone who wanted me gone." She didn't deny it. Her lips tightened, then loosened. "I didn't realize how much of me you held until I tried to give it to someone else. That made me close my eyes. Not in pain, in recognition." We sat like that for a while. Two women with too much history between them. Too many years of pride, fear, and longing to untangle in a single afternoon. We didn't hug, but we sat a little closer. She picked at the hem of her sleeve. "I should have fought harder. For you. For myself." "You didn't know what needed fighting," I said. "That's not weakness. That's youth." The breeze softened, and we watched a toddler chase a butterfly across the grass, while his father called after him half-heartedly. It reminded me of when I used to call her name across these same fields, chasing kites she couldn't hold on to. When we stood, she reached for my hand, just for a second. Our palms met and separated like it had always been that simple. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't closure, but it was something enough to carry us forward for one more day. We didn't say everything, but for the first time in a long time, what we didn't say wasn't meant to hurt. The morning sunlight cut softly through the blinds, casting stripes across the kitchen floor like it used to when Isolde was small and liked to lie in those rectangles of light like a cat. I was clearing out old folders on my laptop, trying to make space, not just digitally, but mentally. I'd already moved the wedding files to a hard drive, along with the emails and annotated documents I swore I'd never touch again. Then I saw a folder I didn't remember naming, just one clip inside. Its title read, "If I Get Too Afraid to Say It Out Loud." I clicked it open with a hesitation that surprised me. The screen lit up with her face, nervous, unfiltered. She was sitting in a hotel room, her hair pulled into a low bun, wearing a robe. She looked straight into the camera, then away, then back. "If I go through with this wedding," she said, barely above a whisper, "please know I wasn't afraid of marriage. I was afraid of failing their image. I was afraid of disappointing a version of me they'd already decided was real. I should have trusted you more, Mom. I should have asked questions. I should have stopped pretending." She stopped the video, took a breath, hit record again. "If you see this, it means I didn't find my voice in time. But I want you to know I always heard yours." I watched it twice, then closed the lid and let the silence hang around me like something sacred. I didn't cry. Not because it didn't move me, but because something deeper happened instead, an unspooling of tightness in my chest that had been there so long I forgot it wasn't natural. The rest of the day moved slowly. I did laundry, folded towels, made eggs. The house was still, but not empty. It felt like presence lived there again, in a way it hadn't in years. I folded the quilt I had once stitched for her wedding and placed it gently into the cedar chest at the foot of my bed. Not to bury it, not to forget it, but to keep it safe. It no longer represented rejection. Now it just belonged to a different story, one that hadn't ended the way I thought it would, but mattered all the same. In the afternoon, I sat at my desk and wrote a letter addressed to Valora. I didn't hold back. I told her what manipulation looked like when it wore pearls. I told her how legacy can be a weapon when wielded by those afraid to love without rules. But I never sealed the envelope. I tore it up quietly, not out of fear, just clarity, because revenge had lost its taste. Truth had already spoken, and I didn't need her acknowledgement anymore. Just before sunset, Isolde appeared on the porch with 2 mugs in hand. She offered one without a word, then sat beside me. "One for you," she said, "and one for the version of me that almost lost you." We didn't toast. We didn't reminisce. We just sipped, the warm weight of the mug grounding us both. The breeze lifted the edges of the old porch curtain. Birds gathered at the feeder I'd refilled earlier. That moment, quiet, unadvertised, was the closest thing to healing I'd ever felt. When she left later that evening, she didn't promise anything. She didn't offer a clean ending or a plan, but she stood straighter. There was something whole in her again, something reclaimed. I watched her walk down the drive and turn the corner. She didn't look back, and I didn't need her to, because some things don't get fixed. Some things don't need to. Some things just need to be honored for what they were, even when they didn't become what we wanted. I didn't win them back. I didn't lose them either. I just stood long enough for the story to write itself honest. I've learned that sometimes love doesn't leave with a slammed door. It leaves with silence, edited out of family pictures and replaced by versions of you that never existed. But if you stay long enough, if you hold your ground with quiet strength, the truth finds its way back. Not everything broken needs mending. Some things just need to be witnessed with open eyes and a steady heart. What about you? Have you ever been written out of a story you helped build, or found your way back into a relationship not with loud apologies, but with a shared quiet understanding? If this story spoke to you, even just a little, leave a comment below with a 1, or tell me where you're watching from. And if it didn't, I'd still love to hear why. Let's talk, not argue. If you'd like to hear more real stories like this, grounded in love, loss, and the lessons in between, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what comes next.